We're coming back after many months, and the reason is that I saw this morning a series of tweets by Dr. Shirin Mangesh about the government of Pakistan targeting over 400 expat Pakistanis, and later it was announced that the list has been shelved. What is the significance of this?
I think, first of all, to understand why the government of Pakistan, basically the PDM government, which I call a junta, is compelled to move in that direction, is that because after the May 9th events, which I believe, as per my analysis, is that they have staged themselves, they have created a situation in which they have totally emasculated Pakistan's media, Pakistan's civil society, Pakistan's political parties, and there's no real opposition in the country. And now the only opposition that is coming in front of them is from the ex-Pakistanis, especially the outside, the expat Pakistanis, especially the Pakistanis from North America and especially within the United States. And my sources have told me from within the embassy that for the past several weeks, in fact, they were working on making a list of, compiling a list of the Pakistanis who were very vocal, who were critics. They were trying to basically compile their addresses and phone numbers. And I was very intrigued at why they are trying to do that. And as you know, that I also regularly meet an American key policing organization, and the policing organization, also assesses the risks to someone like me who's a critic. This process is going on by the policing organizations in Canada, by the policing organizations in the United Kingdom, and they do also talk to each other. And they have also been looking at the activities of the Pakistani missions, or at least some of the individuals affiliated or associated with the Pakistani missions, who are not strictly speaking diplomats, but they think that these people are very irresponsible, and they interfere with the Pakistani community in the United States and Canada and in the United Kingdom. And I have also learned that there was a large office or sort of a cell within the New York office of the Pakistani mission that was interfering with the domestic community. They were actually appearing on the side of one Pakistani businessman against the other, and there were reports and complaints of commissions, kickbacks, and extortion in the city of New York. And that office, several months ago, was asked to leave, and they have probably shifted some of the staff to Houston and some of the staff to Washington. So the policing organizations within North America, the Canada and United States, are very much alive to the fact that Pakistani Americans, who are both the citizens and the residents, are being, are at risk, and the American organizations are basically looking at that risk.
But the list has just recently been made, right? And what you're suggesting is that people are already being harassed.
You see, several weeks ago, Asad Faizi, who is a prominent Pakistani origin businessman in Seattle, tweeted that how FBI officers visited him, knocked on his door, and he was very surprised at why they wanted to visit him. And then they introduced themselves through their cards, official cards. When they meet you, they always show you, like in the movies, they show you their card, which has the star and everything. First of all, they want to verify this thing. They show your official card, their ID and everything. And that really scares someone who's not used to meeting the FBI. But then they informed Asad Faizi, which he tweeted. And then I spoke to him. I got his number from someone and I spoke with him. And they said they landed him and they said that, look, we are here because you're an American citizen, you're a businessman here, and we have reason to believe that your life is under threat, especially if you go to Pakistan. And they advised him not to go to Pakistan. And they said that they're monitoring him, and they have their own ways of monitoring people's presence, movement, logistics, phone call, and everything. So the thing has been going on. So what the Pakistani embassies and the consulates don't realize that the policing organizations in these Western countries are very much alive to the activities of the Pakistani missions and the Pakistani consulates. And while they are trying to monitor the Pakistani community and trying to harass the Pakistani community, the policing organizations are also watching them. And within the city of London, I think the policing organizations have already conveyed to the Pakistani individuals associated with the missions that, look, nothing irresponsible is allowed on the British soil. And I think the way the Pakistani missions are conducting themselves in the United States, sooner or later the situation will arise where the US authorities will have to tell them that whatever happens in outside the United States is a different matter, and you cannot do any irresponsible act on the US soil. Now, why they made this list, the list you're mentioning, I think there could be a number of the reasons of collecting the addresses. They could think of, sending harassing messages or communication. They could actually leak their addresses to their own assets and people within these foreign countries, or they were planning something else, planning something stupid. But
So are these 400 people now under their lives under threat?
I mean, it's too strong to say their life's under threat, because I think that the way Dr. Shini Bangish has leaked it on the Twitter, she has also mentioned that it was discussed with the current senior and ex-diplomats, and they have advised them not to issue the list or not to act on it. That means the list was not.
Why was that?
So,
Why? I mean, they made a list. Why would they formally
first
told
of all,
not to act on it?
one has to be understood that if the idea was to basically create risks for the life of these Pakistanis, then it would not be discussed with the diplomats. These kind of matters where you are thinking of some sort of coercive action or aggressive action, an aggressive action that involves law and order situation, or you are taking law in your hand, then the diplomats would not have known. Then other sections of the missions or the embassies would only be active. So I think the fact that it was in the cognizance of the diplomats, the ex-diplomats and the present diplomats, means that they were thinking of somehow or the other pressing upon the Pakistani community that we know you're vocal, you critic, you need to shut up, or they're trying to target them in other ways like intimidation, harassment, or setting other people against them, or so on. But I don't think so. The diplomats will not be involved if it is because. And I think the positive fact is this, that the diplomats have actually put the foot down, and they've said that, look, I mean, you have responsibilities under the international law, and the list may include many people who are not just living here for working or on H1, but might actually be residents, because there are several levels of the status which people enjoy. I mean, anyone who's working within the United States has to be legally here. Has to be either working on H1, or has to be a student, or has to be a green card holder, or has to be a citizen. I mean, very few people will be just tourists over here, They have to have a status. And same is the situation for United Kingdom and for Canada and for Australia and for New Zealand. And these are only these 4, 5, and 6 countries, a few countries within Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, where the Pakistani government is bothered about the people, because the Pakistanis who live, and the great majority of Pakistanis that live across the Middle East, have no rights. There, they would not be engaged in.
What are these people doing which is affecting the government of Pakistan to such a level that they've made a list of people who need to be tackled in some way?
It's a very good question, in the sense that, as I mentioned in the outset, that after the unfortunate events of the May 9th, the Pakistani regime, which is a junta, civil military, has controlled all kind of media and civil society. There's no real expression, there is no dissent, there is no voices of critique. Slowly and gradually they will come back, but they're very worried by the rising dissent and criticism that is emerging especially from United States and Canada, especially from United States. And when the Pak, which is a pro-Pakistan lobbying group, it's not a lobbying group for everyone. It's an NGO. It's a registered thing, and it has. We also went to attend their functions, and they interacted with about 66 to 70 congressmen, which were both senators and the representatives of the House, and they persuaded them to write a detailed letter expressing concern on the condition of the human rights within Pakistan, and they wrote the letter to the Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I think then the PDM regime in Pakistan is unnerved. While they have not faced any criticism from the Biden administration so far, they are worried that if this noise and dissent keeps on increasing within the Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and several senators and House of Representatives have so far spoken either on record, or they have spoken within the government, or they have tweeted, or they have.
Brad Sherman recently tweeted, he retweeted a story, in fact, I think it's from The Intercept, which said that Pakistani media has been totally muffled with respect to mentioning Imran Khan's name. He thought this was a very shameful thing, and he tweeted to that effect.
He said that, yeah, exactly. And Brad Sherman, the Pakistani system knows very well that Brad Sherman is a very important voice. He's democratic. He's very close to President Biden. And Brad Sherman is also someone who had welcomed Shahbaz.
So these people are being targeted because they're talking about the human rights in Pakistan and the violation of these human rights, which is happening for the past 1 year. Is that the basic crux of why
not only the human rights? Not only the human rights. I think the Pakistani Americans, notable Pakistani Americans, are raising their voice for the first time. This is probably first time in the history that the Pakistani diasporas are actually speaking against the Pakistani government. before this, the Pakistani diasporas were always aligned with a government in Pakistan, and they were basically speaking against India or on the cause of Kashmir, or they were trying to prevent the imposition of sanctions on Pakistan, mostly for weapon supply or spare parts or F-16s or funds or something like this. This is the first time that the Pakistani American community has grown and evolved to a level of political consciousness that it has realized its own power, its importance and significance, and it is trying to engage the American political system for looking on the situation within Pakistan. And the situation is not only the human rights, it is of course the abuse of human rights, it's also the system of the rule of law. The courts are not being heard, the Supreme Court is totally being ignored, the high courts are being given a shut-up call. The whole process of democracy in Pakistan has been set aside, and the Pakistani American community is raising voice on it. I think the one mistake they're actually doing is that they are only presenting themselves as they're only concerned about Imran Khan. I have also said in my Urdu vlog that the Pakistani American community needs to broaden its agenda. It should not present itself just like they are only pro-Imran, and if Imran Khan becomes the prime minister, then the challenges and issues of Pakistan or the problems of Pakistan end for them. I think they need to raise their voice that they're concerned about the human rights violations in Pakistan. They're concerned about the state of democracy in Pakistan. They're concerned about the incursion of the military into the process of running the country. This military's domination and control. They're also worried about the economic situation in Pakistan. They're worried about elections not being held in Pakistan. So they need to broaden the agenda, and this is the only way they can resonate effectively with the American community.
What's making these Pakistani diaspora and their protests different from what has happened in the past? I mean, we've seen earlier protests about the Baloch missing persons, for example, or the ones that are missing in KP. So what's making these protests different in terms of the human rights aspect?
It's a good question. First of all, it's very sad that all of us who have lived in Pakistan and who have lived across the world have ignored the missing persons when they were from Balochistan. And we have also ignored the PTM protests from the frontier area. And we have ignored the human rights abuse and all the reports that were coming from the tribal areas or from Sawat. But now I think what has happened is there is in fact a leap forward in Pakistani consciousness. And that has happened because once the PDM regime unleashed itself in Punjab, which is in fact the almost 60% of the Pakistani population, and the great majority of the Pakistani middle classes, the professional classes, the doctors, the engineers, the IT professionals, the businessmen, they all arise from Punjab. So now when the fascism has hit them within Punjab, they have started realizing this thing, that what has been happening in Pakistan. And before this, when Baloch groups and the others were protesting at the Capitol Hill, very rarely though, or they were protesting here, they were very small in numbers. They looked like very focused groups, looked as if someone was supporting them, or maybe the local administration here was more sympathetic to them.
But even now, people think someone's supporting them, right? There's discussion constantly. In fact, the DGISPR's press release was also hinting to that effect, that there are outside players involved in this whole thing.
Yes, I know. I've seen that that unfortunate press talk from the DGISPR. But this is playing by the old book. They're trying to convince themselves. I think they know it fully well that behind the strong feelings of the Pakistani diasporas, let it be in the United States or UK or in Canada, there is no foreign power. They know it fully well. I mean, they're just trying to convince themselves and trying to fool the people there in Pakistan. They fully know this thing, that no one is behind this. I mean, when certain dissident or insurgent groups suddenly appeared within Washington, there was reason to believe that someone might have financed them, someone might have funded them, someone might have been sympathetic to them. But here the situation is this, that the Pakistani diaspora, this is the influential side of the entrenched Pakistani diaspora that is speaking, persuading the congressmen and the senators to speak, but yet the Biden administration has not shown any inkling or any symptoms or any proof of its sympathy, despite the fact that what happened in Pakistan in the last 15 months is unprecedented in its...
Why do you think that is? I mean, after all, we've seen Antony Blinken has tweeted about Cambodia, he's tweeted about Bangladesh.
I saw your tweet in which you said that Antony Blinken is going alphabetically. First Bangladesh, then Cambodia, A, B, C, D. I saw that tweet, which you did.
But why hasn't he reached P then? Why hasn't he reached Pakistan?
I think, this raises some very difficult and interesting questions. That whatever happened in Pakistan in the past 15 months in terms of the abuse of the human rights, the suppression of the media freedoms. I mean, look at the murder of Shahid Arshad Sharif in Kenya, the way Imran Riaz has been abducted and detained several times, the way other media people like Jamil Faruqi have been beaten, the way Ayaz Amir was abused on the roads, the way Imran Khan had an assassination attempt. So one expected that the State Department will come up very strongly, but neither the State Department, neither the 10 Downing Street or the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office has taken any clear position on these issues. The only major Western country that has taken a clear position is the Canadian side. They have actually lived up to the values, and United States and UK have not really taken a position. So it raises a lot of question. It looks like as if they are sort of not very unhappy by what's happening in Pakistan. I mean, one can speculate this, that they are sort of giving time to the PDM regime to fix itself. But it's not very clear. I mean, but it's very surprising.
Now, these 400 people whose name was on the list and then the list has not been published any longer, does this now mean that the government of Pakistan will not be targeting them any longer, or will it not publicly issue that list? Is that the difference?
This we don't know. We need to basically find out. We'll find out more about it very soon. But I don't think they're going to shelf the agenda of harassing and intimidating these people unless the local host governments become alive to it. And I'm sure that Pakistani Americans will now, I expect from them, and I will request them that they should reach out to their respective senators and the congressmen and the representatives, and through them to the policing organizations, because ultimately the US government and the British government has to impress upon the Pakistani missions that they are not expected to do irresponsible actions. And anyone who is on the American soil or the British soil or the Canadian soil is now under the legal jurisdiction of these governments. If they basically have anything, they need to basically file a case against them. I mean, let's see what charges they can bring against someone.
So your last thoughts on what is it that the diaspora Pakistanis can do positively for Pakistan?
I think Pakistani diasporas have always been part of Pakistan. And with the rise of communication and awareness in the last, say, 1 decade or 2 decades, they have played a very important role. Whether it's a flood in Pakistan, or it's an earthquake, or there is a pandemic, the Pakistani communities have raised funds, they have provided logistic support, they have traveled to Pakistan, they also do a lot for the cause of education and health in Pakistan. But the Pakistani communities were not really part of the political system within United States and Britain. They have always remained on the periphery, just like drops of oil on the water or drops of water on the oil. And I think this is what happened in the last 15 months is the beginning of a political process of integration within the large American political system. And the Pakistani communities, the more they realize their own importance, I mean, they will sooner or later, if they have not realized, they will realize this thing, that Pakistani missions have been dependent on the Pakistani communities. It's not the other way around. So far, in the last 70 years, the traffic has been the other side. The community has somehow or other have been made to realize this thing, that they are dependent on the ambassadors and the consul generals, and they needed to please them to get protocol or get acceptability and to get into the embassy functions. The Pakistani American community is rich, affluent, professionally successful, and especially the doctors are very important parts of the American community. As you have seen in this country, that doctors are very respected professionals. So the representatives and the congressmen and the senators have a lot of respect for the local GPs and practitioners and consultants. So doctors have a lot of political weight that way. So they can move the pendulum in their direction if this process continues. And I believe the Pakistani American community will continue to integrate itself into the political system. So the embassies and consulates in the government of Pakistan will realize that the communities are more important and the government of Pakistan is far less important. But so far, when I say it's like kind of an earthquake, because people have not really been thinking that way, that it is the Pakistani American community that is the source of strength rather than the Pakistani government that is the source of.
It's interesting. It reminds me of, now that we're in the United States, no taxation without representation. So the Pakistani diaspora has been sending back $30 billion
No,
to
that's
Pakistan.
not true. That's not true. The Pakistani diasporas worldwide have been sending this kind of remittances.
That's what I said.
And the great majority of that
Yes,
flows from the Middle East. It's not from the North America.
Yep. No, I did re-say it. I said that the overall the diasporas have sent back $30 billion, but they're not expected to talk. Which is fine because, of course, I mean, in the GCC countries, it is difficult to ask for change in Pakistan. But definitely, I think in the Western countries, Australia, United Kingdom, and the US, the Pakistani diaspora can play a huge political role as well to bringing positive change in Pakistan as well. We thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.